Episode of Emotional Nightmares. I am your host. My name is Tyler. And on today's episode, we got with us a special guest, relationship coach and a trauma healing is what we're doing. So with that, though, I'm going to go ahead and let her kind of introduce herself a little bit and kind of get a feel for her from there. So if you want to introduce yourself to us.
Yeah. Hi, Tyler, and hello, everyone who's listening to today's episode. So as Tyler said, I'm a relationship coach and a trauma healing facilitator. And basically, I actually used to be a software engineer and project manager for about 25 years.
That's a huge leap.
It was a huge leap, and it was scary and risky, and at the same time, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 19 years ago, and it was that diagnosis what put me on a path to find healing, to find understanding, and to find better ways to live with a diagnosis that most doctors will say there's no cure. So I jump into studying relationship skills. I become a relationship coach. I was single at a time and I was afraid that no man would ever love me because of my diagnosis. So I did all my inner work. I met a great man and we have been together for almost 8 years and married. And in this journey of understanding, I'm somebody who's committed to healing. What can I do better? How can I learn about myself? What needs work? And in that, I found myself 2 years ago in a trauma bond relationship with a business coach who was supposedly helping me grow my business. But I was observing that the opposite was happening. So what I did is I reached out to a trauma healing specialist who is currently I'm studying with, continue studying with him, because what happened is my story, and let me just make a pause here. So bipolar disorder and other mental illnesses are a symptom of a nervous system that is dysregulated. So we experience the ups that most people experience as feeling up or elated, but it's very intense. It's above the range of the window of tolerance. And the same thing with the downs, the depressions. We just don't feel down like most people do. We feel really, really down in the pit. So those extremes of up and downs is really the nervous system that is responding to trauma. It's been wired in a way because of trauma. So in my own journey of healing and understanding my trauma, I went back to being in utero. And when I was in my mom's womb, so just imagine this, my mom has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder even before I was born. He has anxiety disorder for a long, long time. She's undiagnosed borderline personality. And in the mother line for us, we're talking about generations, in our genes, there's mental illness, there's narcissism, there's suicide. Imagine that I am in my mom's womb with all of that's happening at the same time. Oh, and she started taking psychiatric medication by the time she was 8 years old. That was the soup where I was in the womb, and my mom was exposed to a lot of stress because she had a job at a dentist's office. So guess what? Whenever I go to see the dentist and I hear that sound of the grill, I just feel like somebody is just poking my inside of my ears with needles. It's just such a sensation. But as the journey of doing this work, I've learned that I also have sensory sensitivities. So for example, sounds, light, textures, I have to wear clothes that are very soft. I can't wear wool or anything that feels itchy because I have all these sensitivities that I had developed. And then as a way to cope with a mom, once I was born, and the way to cope with a mom who had a lot going on, my way to cope with it was to develop patterns of being over functioning, over hypervigilant, over the top, everything that you can imagine, overachiever. I've had all the over the tops and more. So I find myself now in a place where now that I understand the trauma, I understand the genetics, and I understand the factors in my life that, of course, me and my siblings and my mom and everyone in my mom's family has that gene, but it's the factors that activate that gene that make the disease manifest. So my siblings, neither one of them have bipolar disorder. They probably have some anxiety that they deal with, and they cope with it with alcohol, with smoking. Not so much anymore. They've cut back on all of that, but for a long time, that was their way to cope. But they have not been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Me, on the other hand, I get diagnosed 20 years ago, and I put myself on a path to heal. I tried energy healing and became an energy healer myself. I tried yoga. I became a certified yoga teacher and certified yoga therapist. I become a relationship coach for individuals and then for couples. And then I stumble into this man whose genius is on the how you call it, the nervous system, and he's a former chiropractor, and this is where I am today.
You answered a lot of my questions without me asking them. So I appreciate that. All right. So, I mean, you answered everything for the bipolar disorder. I mean, but I do want to lean on some of your relationship advice for our viewers. So, because, we deal a lot with substance abuse over here. And one of the things with that is we find ourselves in a lot of toxic relationships, right? So when I was reviewing some of your work and I was on your website and I was looking at some of your stuff on YouTube and stuff, and I see that and one of the things you mentioned about consistent conflicts and poor communication is a common issue couples face. So my question is what do you think the root cause of these patterns are?
So, yeah, that is a great question, Tyler. And in my experience, the root of those patterns comes back to childhood wounds, childhood trauma, and ways to cope with that trauma that no longer, like strategies that no longer work when you are an adult. So as an example, like when there's addiction, really at the core is trauma, is a person who's wounded and don't have the tools to work through their trauma, resolve what's internal. So when there's trauma, our experience of what happened gets frozen in time and it gets stored in the body. And really those relationship patterns that we develop, like when we're young, we want to be loved, we want to be accepted for who we are. And oftentimes we trade who we are for connection. So we start putting up masks and becoming a little bit of chameleon. And that's where all these different patterns of codependency, manipulation, there's so many more I can think of. That's where those patterns originate because we grew up with, like we put our parents on a pedestal or we put them in a pit. And then that just creates an unhealthy relationship that we continue to mirror that into adulthood. So what's familiar during childhood, which is probably chaos, like it was for me in my family, you grow up and I search for relationships where that chaos looked familiar to me, but in the bigger picture, those were toxic relationships. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense to me. I appreciate that. I really like your answer on that. So this actually is a question from a friend of mine. So this question is something that yeah. So he kind of, I was talking to him about interviewing you and he was helping me formulate some of these questions. One of the questions is when a couple is on a verge of a separation or a divorce, is there a point of no return or can healing truly even happen?
Yeah. So the answer to that, and because I actually have worked with many couples on the verge of divorce, my suggestion to couples who are in that spot, which by the way is scary. It is really scary. It also brings up a lot of guilt about, like, if they have kids, what's going to happen to the kids. There's also shame because you don't want to tell your friends that you're divorced. Like there's a stigma that comes with being divorced, especially if you want to start dating again. But to answer your question, what I recommend people is to reach out to someone skilled in the area of relationships. It could be a relationship coach, it could be a relationship counselor. I personally don't recommend any kind of talk therapy because, as I mentioned earlier, the trauma is in the body. When you go and talk about your problem, that's not going to solve anything. I mean, it's just like scratching the itch of something bigger. But I literally have worked with couples that said, okay, they said, we're going to work with you. And they commit to doing 6 sessions with me. And they say, if we don't see a change, we're just going to file for divorce. And that couple that I can think of that went through that, they did their work and they stick together, and the relationship is better than ever because they got the right help. When people learn relationship skills, learn relationship tools, and work on their wounds or trauma, anything is possible.
When you say work on it, so I'm kind of a fan of talk therapy. It's what I do for a living.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on that.
Yeah, so, but I mean, it's interesting though, because like I know, so when you talk about like, aside from talk therapy, right, what kind of forms of therapy more or less would you have them do, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of IFS, Internal Family Systems, the work of Richard Schwartz. Are you familiar with it?
I am.
Yeah. And then followed by, there's another form of attachment theory therapy that is called PACT, PACT. I don't remember what it stands for, but that was developed by Stan Tatkin, who took all the work of the past on attachment theory and took it to the next level. So those are the 2 that I would recommend.
Okay. So when going through some of your stuff, I see you talk about like helping people rebuild self-worth and confidence, right? So helping them rebuild self-worth and confidence, obviously, in our world over here with substance abuse, one of the things that we are plagued with, like as recovering addicts and stuff, is that self-worth and feeling like, especially when you go through the relapse pattern, right? It's the, oh man, I messed up again. They tend to lose that confidence. What are some practical steps that somebody can take to begin the journey of rebuilding that self-worth and that confidence?
So when I think about like a self-worth and confidence, really where it comes from is we all have a shadow, and the shadow is everything that we reject about ourselves, everything that we shame about ourselves, everything that we don't like about ourselves. We push it into the shadow. Okay, like, are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
So really the work to increase like self-worth, confidence, self-esteem, become magnetic, it comes from doing the work to integrate that shadow into who we are. So rather than hiding, rather than disconnecting from it, embracing it as a part of ourselves. And I'm trying to think about a tip that I can recommend someone. This is, and I'm going to be transparent. This requires more than just like a tip or something that I can just give you like a teaser so that you can take with you. It's a lot deeper than that because
it takes a lot of work.
Well, I don't know if it's a lot of work. It's going into parts of ourselves that are uncomfortable. So it's about embracing the parts in the shadow. That's what it is. And when we do that, that's when we achieve wholeness. We feel more whole in ourselves. And yeah, like, do you think that answers what you were asking?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I always tell everybody, we have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we're going to tend to get a little uncomfortable in order to rebuild in all of this.
Yeah.
So how does the unresolved trauma from childhood or past relationships affect how we show up in love today?
Well, because we continue to repeat the same patterns because we're looking for what's familiar. So because it's almost like having a mask, and the mask is there, and this is how we're seeing the world, right? Like through the mask. And that mask can be codependency, can be narcissism, it can be, just put whatever name you want to put with it. Or you don't have to put a name, but just like our past wounds, like, this is who I am here right now. But if I let those patterns get into the way, like, they're right here and they're wired in our nervous system, they're wired in our brain. That's why it's hard to change them, and it's work. So I can really see the world if I just like have one eye covered, right? And this part that's covering is the trauma, is the old wounds. They get on the way from us to see the real love and attract the real love. So if I'm this person, I'm gonna end up attracting someone who has like the same one but the other side, right? So,
Yeah.
and then that's how trauma bonds happen,
Trauma
to put it
bonds.
simply. Yeah.
Yeah, trauma bonds. They're fun. So you've spoken about transforming years of therapy into a more intimate result through coaching, right? Can you elaborate on like how coaching methods kind of expedite the healing process compared to traditional therapy?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to be clear, I'm not bashing talk therapy. I'm not saying that it's bad.
There's a right way and a wrong way. Sometimes they get misconstrued.
Yeah.
Like in my field, because like I deal with mental health, so like a lot of times in my field, you'll get counselors and I'll be like, Lord, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that with that particular client. So like there's a right time to do it and a right way to do it. Sometimes it gets done very wrong.
Right. And it can also happen with coaches, right? Like I just talk about being in a trauma bond with my business coach. She had her side of the equation to contribute to this. So basically what happens is oftentimes, and I started my journey in therapy. I've started doing individual therapy and then group therapy. But basically what happens is like therapy can be like that opening of a door that allows the person to step in and then to decide and commit if they want to more, if they want to commit on that path of personal growth and healing. In my case, I spent probably 11 years in talk therapy and not really getting much result because sometimes, I don't go into that, but the difference with a coach is like the reason why talk therapy is not enough is because talk therapy goes from here. It's about talking about what you're thinking.
Right.
But trauma is in the body. It's stored in the body. I don't know if you've ever read the book The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk.
It's in my bookstore here, and for my Apple phone, I have it on. It's 4 more books, and I'll be reading that one. So I know what book you're talking about. It's in my to-do books.
Yeah. So maybe after our conversation, you'll bump it up higher into your list. I don't know. But this is what happens. The trauma is stored into the body. Look, it's like a nervous system that's wired for firing off too quickly. That's why people are reactive, right? So as a coach, like the training that I've done is to like understand like when a client has a certain emotion, really what it means and what is connected to their past. And so I work with them what it's called top down, which is it starts with a story that they have and we keep going down to understand where was the connection in their childhood or teenagers or young adults. And then once we find it, then we apply understanding, compassion, embracing that part so that part is no longer frozen in time. And then that part gets released. And that's how we feel lighter after doing this kind of work, right?
Yeah.
So, and then coaches, they can work with, like, for example, I have training in somatic experiencing. I have some experience with breath work. So I just have like a toolkit that is what has worked for me when it comes to like helping clients.
That's it's an interesting practice. I have a friend who practices. That's the one where like you do the different pressure points on your body and the movements and stuff.
I think that's called EFT.
Yeah. Well, she calls it somatic. She calls it like a somatic form of it.
Sure. Yeah, I think there are a couple of different ones.
Yeah, it's interesting. She had me do it for free with her. It was quite interesting. You kind of move your body and shake and stuff. And
yeah, and there's so many things out there, like breath work when it's done in a gentle way can also be very cathartic. But what I was going to say is usually coaches have more tools in their toolkits. And the way I work with my clients is about guiding them to find the answers within themselves, as opposed to a therapist who might be telling you what to do or have usually a therapist tends to be more oriented to like the person and helping that them. And I remember my therapist telling me, well, yeah, your mom shows signs of being narcissistic. And when I said, oh, well, if my mom is narcissistic, I don't want to talk to her anymore. And my therapist kind of like championed me and said, yeah, don't talk to her anymore. And all I was doing was running around for the problems with my mother instead of
Yeah.
resolving what I needed to resolve inside of myself so that I can have a good relationship with her, if that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense. Did you guys mend that relationship? Did you?
We're still working on that. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, I'm the same way with my mom.
Yeah.
We're working.
Yeah.
So it's a
Well,
work in
as long as
progress.
we're working on it, exactly. That's really what matters.
So you've overcome a significant amount of personal challenges, including the bipolar disorder as well too. How has your personal healing journey helped inform your work with clients facing their own traumas?
I like in my experience, I've been through a lot. There's so much more that I don't talk about in my bio and my website. Like I don't talk about the sexual trauma that I experienced or the spiritual trauma or financial trauma or the PTSD that I developed after being hospitalized at least 10 times. But the fact that I had done my own work, I'm I'm better suited to help other people because I've been through the process of having to be compassionate with myself. And then that's what I offer my clients, that like nothing that they tell me is ever going to scare me. And I'm not going to judge them for anything that they say. And if I get caught in a judgment, I go back and resolve that judgment. So what I do is, because of the work that I've done, I can create safety for my clients, pretty much.
I like that. You're writing a book though, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna include all that story in the book, right?
Yes, yes, yes. A lot of really raw, vulnerable stories. The time when I was arrested because I was doing yoga like late, like early evening outside of the psychiatric ward, and they thought I had an arm, that I had a weapon, and all I was doing was just like this tree pose, but they thought I had a weapon, and they put me on the back of a police car, and I got arrested. So all of those stories and so much more is gonna be in the book.
Well, join the club. Everybody on that's been on this channel or comes to this channel has usually been arrested. So you're in the right place. So let me ask you, what's your long-term vision for the work and the impact you want to make in this world?
Well, my mission is to facilitate healing for the masses.
Okay.
And with the amount of access that there is in technology, apps, you name it, I want to be able to help as many people as I can. And obviously, I'm just like a I was going to say one man, but I corrected myself. I'm a one woman show over here. So what's next for me is getting the book released, like published and out the door, which, by the way, I set myself the date of June 27 to finish the first book draft. So it's getting the book done. Then I want to start doing more public speaking. So if you know anybody, if you have any avenues where I can speak, I would love to know that. Or if anybody who's listening to this podcast, if you know people, connections, I would welcome them, because then I want to go on a book tour and just share about the book like all around the country. And then I want to do a TED Talk about how bipolar and mental illness is a form of dysregulated nervous system and what that means. And then after that, I want to go on opera. I want to be on opera's book club. I want the book to be a bestseller. My first language is Spanish, so I want to do everything that I just said in Spanish to have more, to double my impact. And this is my life. This is what I'm going to be. I'm not going to retire. This is what I'm going to continue doing, and just helping people, whether there's an app, there's what is it that I can make it easy and affordable for everybody, for the masses, as I just said.
I like it. I'll be waiting for the book. I want to read it.
Good.
I'll be waiting.
Good. That's awesome. I actually have a link that I'll share with you where people can sign up to receive updates on the book. So I'll keep people updated and let them know of the book progress.
Yeah, send me over all your links. We'll put it in the description for the videos. So sounds like you're real busy because your deadline's right around the corner.
Yes, I've been spending a lot of my time typing. Yes.
Yeah. I greatly appreciate that you managed to find time to come on. I greatly appreciate that. No, that's a you got a lot of accomplishments going on.
Yeah. Well, it was 20 years of living a nightmare. Bipolar disorder is a form of a nightmare. It's like being trapped in a cage. It's kind of like that elephant that's been living for 10 years inside of a 5 by 5 foot cage, and they take them out of the cage, and all it does is just take one step further, one step back, and then moves them back to the cage, right? Like that's how bipolar disorder it can be very devastating. And I'm sure that whoever is listened to this, like there's been your own version of a nightmare. And to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that's what I'm doing now, is just guiding people to the light.
When you first got diagnosed with bipolar, right? What was the first step you took to say, you know what? So I asked this question to everybody, kind of in a different realm, because it's usually substance abuse related. But with bipolar, right? So you get that diagnosis, so you kind of feel relieved in a sense, because it's like, okay, now I kind of know what's going on, right? What was that first experience where you were like, for lack of better terms, you were like, oh shit, something's got to change, and I got to make it change?
Yeah, yeah. So what happened when I was first diagnosed is that I was in denial. And I was in denial because my mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder before I was born. And I watched my mom being in a combination of medications that were not good for her. And my mother was suicidal. And I watched her try to commit suicide multiple times. So in the face of being diagnosed, I didn't want to take medication because I was like, that's what almost killed my mother. I'm not going to do this. So I first just walk away and try to do it on my own. I was doing flower bags. I was doing feng shui. I was doing all the things that actually are not helpful for someone with bipolar. So eventually I landed in the hospital again, and I was diagnosed again. And that was the point where at first I was in denial, but then I realized that I had to do something about it. I had to find answers. I had to find a better way to live, and here I am.
Nice. So that's remarkable, right? Because a lot of people when diagnosed, how do I say this without offending the other community? A lot of people just go right directly to the like, okay, all these medications are gonna fix me and stuff, and a lot of people don't get to the wait, let me figure out the root causes and let me try to change that avenue. So I mean that's awesome. So I hope you put that in the book as well too.
Yes, 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 definitely. You're right on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not gonna hold up too much of your time. I mean, it's late here. I'm over on the East Coast. So I greatly appreciate you coming on. It was good having you on here. Is there anything that you would like the viewers to know, like a final thought that you would like them to know?
Well, there's a quote that I have on my website that the first time I heard it, it just became like my mantra, and is our ability to live and love is really limitless. Our ability to heal is beyond our wildest imagination. And the most important thing is to not give up and keep seeking, because what you need is out there.
Nice. Well, I thank you for coming on. And as always, you guys could have been anywhere in the world, but you sat here and chose to be here with us. So I greatly appreciate you for tuning in and listening. The links are going to be in the description, so please click them. Check out that book. Go to the website. There's a lot of good information. You can actually book an appointment with you directly off the website, too.
Yes. Yes, you can do that. I have a blog. I don't write a lot of the blog right now because I've been busy with the book, but there are a lot of good information in the blog.
Yeah. So check that out. Tune in again. Hopefully you heard something here today that helped you. If you did not, go to another channel. We don't necessarily care how you get help as long as you get it. As long as you do something different today, tomorrow will look better. So I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler, and thanks everyone for being here.
Absolutely.